There we go, recording in progress. Welcome to Heal and Now. This is a podcast about healing. This is a podcast about being present, cultivating within ourselves present state awareness. When you're in that state of present state awareness, you're actually in the fullness of life. You're living with intensity. And that's what I encourage all my clients to do. Right now, I just finished before writing a blog, which is called Anger, the Neglected Emotion. And I'm going to read that blog out at the beginning of this podcast. Some people like the form of video, other people like to read. So I'm putting all the options out there. Of course, this is live on Facebook. So anyone that wants to come in later on for a chat and talk about more around this subject of anger. It's something that gets talked about a lot, and even my clients, when they come in, they'll talk about maybe their partner is angry and all that, but they've never stopped to think until I bring it to their awareness that, well, are you holding a safe container for their anger? What they tend to turn up and want is validation in themselves that their partner's being a dick. I won't really go there with that unless someone is there to um, share their side of the story. I don't just go with what someone is saying about another person. I can't know that as truth. Everyone's truth is different and expressed differently. And really, what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to cut to the chase and go straight into this blog, share that, and then we'll just see where Saddhanta goes from there on this live broadcast. And anyone that comes on board, who knows what could happen. There could be a pulling of oracle cards. Any questions that you have, place into the comments. I'm trying to keep my eye on Facebook as well as Zoom. But at times I'm not so particularly good at it. It's quite a lot for me to kind of get my head around. So I'm just moving screens around at the moment. Here we go. So anyone that does join me in the YouTube or comes on board and sees this replay on YouTube, I hope you enjoy this. Anger is the neglected emotion. It doesn't get the stage that it needs at times. And so, like I said before, I'm going to go straight into reading this one out. I'm just going to make sure I still have Facebook there in case any questions come up. Okay. Here we go. So this blog, I'm going to need to put my glasses on. I wrote this morning. I started it yesterday. I wrote it this morning. And interesting that I finished it right bang on 12:12. Now, as you know, I'm not one for belief systems, but it has been my experience of what Carl Gustav Jung or Jung called synchronicity. And synchronicity seems to be what can appear to be like a psychic phenomenon or an experience of where as if you're getting a sign from the universe. He did talk about the more that you go with intention into synchronicity, the more that it turns up. And so when I'm pulling oracle cards, what I'm doing is intentionally calling in this phenomenon of synchronicity and where our conscious awareness aligns up with what's happening in life. And it was just interesting that when I finished this blog, I looked on my computer and it was 12:12. So I thought to myself, I'll have a look and see what angel number that is. And it was really interesting because it mentioned about relationships. And this happens to be talking about relationships and emotions and all of that sort of thing. The 12:12 actually lined up beautifully well with what I'd finished in this blog. And so I see that as a synchronicity, or we could call it a sign if you want to call it that. But these synchronicities are everywhere, and we can, with our intention, allow synchronicities to be more prevalent in our life, and it becomes really, really quite special. So I'm going to read this blog out first, and then I'm going to expand upon the blog after that. And if anyone comes on to chat, you are most welcome indeed. So here we go. Anger. the neglected emotion. Anger is like a big brother, and in the family of emotions, the big brother is the one that steps into to defend should any threat be brought to its little brother. This big brother, anger, takes no shit from anyone, and he will do whatever it takes to protect his little brother, sadness. Most people are challenged by the emotions of others, and for some people, they simply can't be around someone else's grief or worry. It may be that they struggle to feel into their own grief, or maybe they were raised in a home where the talking and expressing of these emotions were suppressed or never acknowledged. Anger is the emotion that is most neglected because it is seen as a deficiency in people. But this emotion deserves as much attention as any other emotion. It just needs a container that can hold the space needed to be witnessed and safely released. Big brother anger sticks up for sadness. It protects sadness simply because sadness is vulnerable and can't defend itself. When sadness is given a safe container for expression without judgment, sadness can heal. But if sadness feels threatened, mocked, or prodded, anger comes in with aggression or passive aggression to protect sadness from further shame or disappointment. So what is what is it about anger that is an emotion that sends most that meet it into fight or flight? Many people are okay with holding space for sadness to be expressed and held, but why not anger? Anger is not violent or abusive as such. Just as sadness is the feeling of a sense of loss or regret, anger is simply a feeling of not being heard, seen, or understood. And because it is rare for anger to be given a safe container to express itself, violence and abuse can become the next step in trying to get the attention that anger so craves. Anger is the neglected emotion. And the irony is, anger is seeded and grows through being ignored, which is neglect. The human being is designed for connection and interaction. And when that need is not met within somebody, sadness will begin to arise within them. If they attempt to express the emotion of sadness, but it is met with resistance from the one that it is being shared with, the sadness will begin to create a buffer around it. This buffer is anger. Anger can move in two directions, either into the feminine form of anger, which is passive, in which one builds a wall of protection around the sadness and shuts down from connection because the feeling of the sadness being neglected becomes too much to bear. Melancholy is its expression. Or anger can move into the masculine form, which is aggression. This is when the fear of the sadness being seen is too much, and so one goes on the attack to keep others at bay. This can come across as grumpiness and general pessimism towards life. Then there is complex anger, which builds the walls of self-preservation only to end up too identified and inflicted by the accumulated sadness. Complex anger is when the big brother of sadness comes in revenge. This is known as the complete meltdown. The meltdown begins within. The ego first of all begins to tear down the inner protective walls and becomes self-abusive. The anger first abuses the inner sadness that it is identified with, perpetuating an inner hate. The feeling turns up as a racing heart and sick feeling in the gut. The self-abuse overwhelms sadness to the point of numbness, and then the ego turns its attention outward in search of whoever it can blame for this injustice. Now sadness is completely forgotten, and aggressive anger goes into the meltdown of the from the inner conflict to the outer conflict. Those that have a meltdown are really held or understood. Sadly, again, the truth of the matter is being ignored, and so without a safe container in which anger can be expressed, the anger is destined to grow and even mutate into violence, either to self, other, or both. Guilt then comes in and is amplified when one is judged for being angry. The sadness is further suppressed, and one can end up becoming a prisoner to their own anger. So what to do with anger? Well, anger can only be exhausted through expression. Anger is a byproduct of mental self-judgment, and all self-judgment is learned through the experience of being judged. Anger can be avoided only by sadness being held, loved, and released. The best way to do so is for it to be witnessed, as it brings validation to the one feeling the sadness. This is where active listening through counseling or a non-judgmental ear of a parent, friend, or spouse can help in dissipating the sadness. If anger is present, it is evidence that sadness did not get the attention and awareness that it needed in order to be witnessed, validated, and released. So that is how anger can be avoided. But what if it is too late and anger has now become the gatekeeper and protector of sadness? Well, this is a situation that is more difficult to get help with because many people don't have the capacity to hold space for anger to be expressed. The majority of people fear anger because of its association with abuse and violence. But again, we all need to be more mature in what is going on here. Anger can be abusive and violent, but generally, this outcome is only inevitable when anger is being ignored. Anger's first port of call and outward expression is yelling. Why does one yell? Simply because the calm voice is being ignored. Children do this as they learn very early on in life that yelling gets attention, and attention is all that sadness wants. But if ignored, Big Brother anger will step in to make sure that attention is given. If the yelling is ignored, this is only fuel for the fire. And depending on how desperate the person feels, physical expression can become the next step. So it is evident here what is needed for the neglected emotion of anger. It simply needs to stop being neglected. It must be seen and heard, and more than that, it needs the permission of a silent witness to create and hold a container that will help to avoid more pain and suffering. So how to do this? It's actually simple, and as I've said in previous podcasts, healing is simple, always simple. We all need to simply understand what is needed, but it takes great maturity for one to be a space holder for anger, one that holds a safe container for another to be expressive in their anger needs to be very grounded and stable. They cannot be one that is offended easily, and they need to have very strong boundaries whilst continually emanating the frequency of unconditional love, while the one that so desperately needs the release is allowed to completely fly in their anger. This practice of holding space must have ground rules for both the space holder and the aspirant. The space holder is a silent witness and so needs to remain silent. It is not for the space holder to go into problem solving around what the aspirant is angry about. Problem solving is an ego trip, and ego will only antagonize anger. The aspirant that is given permission to go into expressive anger must stick to pre-agreed boundaries. They are not to be aggressive or abusive. There are not to be aggressive or abusive words or actions towards the space holder in any personal way. If it is a relative, the space holder may permit the aspirant to even express the anger they have or frustration about them. But again, there is no need for name calling, blame, or violence. Now, it is important to understand if the aspirant says something like, when you ignored me the other day, I got so angry. This is not blame. This is them speaking their truth. Blame is when someone actually comes straight out and says, it's all your fault. Blame is not to be permitted in the safe container, nor should the aspirant spend any amount of time yelling at the space holder. This is a time for expression of the pure emotion. One that can hold space for another to express anger is one that has developed great compassion because they themselves know the pain of carrying anger and sadness within themselves. So once anger has had its moment in the light, then a beautiful opportunity arises. Sadness begins to come forward because the container has been proven to be robust and safe. The space holder remains a silent witness as sadness now has its much needed time in the sun. This is the process of healing. It is reverse engineering. But often today, many healers want to get straight to the root of the problem. But this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like trying to pull the core of an onion without first removing the layers. How is that even possible to do so? The problem today is we live in a scroll-through society. Instant gratification and ego-tripping healers bypassing the process of undoing, which is true healing. And they act like a surgeon with no process. They act like a surgeon with no process and go for dramatic results over dealing with the immediate. And from there, then helping the aspirant to journey through the unraveling of conditioning and belief systems that they have created in themselves. And then they continue to move all the way back to the original wound. In our intimate relationships, we must mature to become space holders of emotional expression. Ignorance is the mother of anger, and avoidance its father. We can only heal the family of relationship by raising our consciousness above the societal structures that negate our feelings and see the importance of our personal expression as an opportunity to build solid and lasting relationships, building upon the foundations of unconditional love, openness, and clear boundaries. May you find that space to release, let go, and heal. May you, through the process of undoing, learn and yourself become a silent witness for those that need a safe container. May you find that healing is a journey that all must take. It is the journey of coming home. Let there be light. So that is the blog for today, and looks like we're still going live. I'm not sure if anyone's come on or what's going there, but I want to begin to build upon that. I myself, in my early years as a child, was raised around a lot of anger, and once you learn what's going on and why anger is in the home and all that, you begin to be able to forgive and let go and accept how things were. And I fully accept how things were in the household for me. I love my parents dearly. They're incredible, amazing people. And even though there was a lot of anger in the house, there was there was a container being held in which anger could be expressed. Unfortunately, there were moments where it was expressed in a very low vibration manner, where it became physical. And as I shared in the blog I just read out before, it doesn't have to be that way. The reason people get so frustrated and fly off the handle and have their meltdown is they're not being heard. It's really, really quite simple, isn't it? It's very evident. Someone's yelling and screaming. You only yell and scream because you're not being listened to. You only maybe throw things around and cause a scene because you don't feel like you're being seen. And that is how anger acts. Anger is drastic because now the measures have become drastic because the sadness that is there, the sense of loss has not been held and been given the chance to be released. For myself, when I have had to deal with my own anger, it's been a real, it's truly been a deep journey of self exploration. Not all the anger was just mine. In fact, the way in which I would arrive at anger, only know for myself. I had a lot of sadness going on within me, but I didn't feel like I could express the sadness. Or when I tried to, it wasn't being seen, it wasn't being held, it wasn't being acknowledged or witnessed. And so then that sadness would just be swapped out for anger, and anger would go into that state, that meltdown state, and it can become very unconscious. The key is to acknowledge anger when it's coming through and be conscious about it. So let's pick a intimate relationship for that matter. If there's a partner that's feeling frustrated with their significant other, and they express that they're feeling frustration, but the other partner goes into defense, that's not going to help the anger in that person. It's not going to help them to release that anger, because now what's coming up are excuses or basically resistance, and anger only becomes becomes more angry when there is resistance. Because what's happening is there's already a resistance taking place within that person, because that sadness is there, it's not being heard, and then the anger is resisting the sadness to be expressed now because it doesn't feel safe to be expressed. And so anger is now resisting the sadness that actually needs to be acknowledged. And so when someone else on the outside, if someone is they're expressing their frustration, their anger, and their partner or their significant other is unable to hold space for that anger to come up, if they get defensive, it's resistance. And now you have resistance against resistance, which is going to now create anger in the other partner. And this is where a lot of relationships begin to falter, because there is no safe container for the emotions to be expressed and let go of. When we remove the emotion from the charge, which is the charge behind the story is just a story. A story is not a feeling. An event is an event. If an event is not a feeling or an emotion, they are different. So what is the difference between feelings and emotions? Well, a feeling is a sensation. We all have sensations. We have the five senses. The body is the interface that sends those signals into the brain. The body is that interface that sends those signals to the brain. The consciousness is then witnessing the computation that's taking place in the brain. That is a feeling. Okay, the body feels, it's a sensation. Feelings are sensations. An emotion is when another energy is connected to it. Okay, an emotion is often a feeling with a story attached to it. We begin to attach a story to a feeling, and then it creates this emotion. And the emotion can then just completely fly off on its own tangent. What I've learned through being a QFT practitioner and teaching people QFT, which is so helpful, helps to build people's emotional intelligence around emotions. We don't need to take them so much to heart. We can actually help remove emotions and learning QFT. Anyone can learn it. It's a very, very simple healing modality. And it helps you to understand that when you remove the emotion, the story now just becomes a story again. And so it's the shifting of emotions, it's the releasing of emotions that are important. And my experience of anger was there as a young child. So, of course, I was taught how to be angry as well. I was taught that if um, by example, if I wasn't being listened to, then I got really angry. I remember having incredible screaming matches with my mother in the kitchen. And then you get these anchor points that happen where I can cast my mind back over my intimate relationships where a lot of the arguments took place. Guess where? In the kitchen. It's so interesting that these cycles and patterns and these anchors and these triggers can recirculate these emotions and send us into these bouts of expression that are not really and truly authentic because there's been a loss of consciousness around it. Anger without conscious awareness, without present state awareness, becomes, when it's unconscious like that, it can turn into abuse and violence. And that literally happens, like I said before in the blog, when sadness is not getting the attention or the awareness that it needs from someone that is a witness within a safe container. What can happen in the same way? So sadness almost gives up, and then anger takes over and it's in charge. And when the anger becomes unconscious, now it's like the whole prefrontal cortex and all that shuts down, and now you're just functioning on the reptilian brain. It's now purely just about survival, and that's where you have people that will um, commit horrendous and heinous crimes in a violent manner because they've literally just become unconscious. If we, in our relationships, parents to children, spouses, and children to parents for that matter, can be more conscious with our emotions and see and understand that what's going on, it all starts with a sense of loss. And we can work our way back to that. But when your child is angry or your spouse is angry, the best thing you can do is not go into avoidance and not go into resistance, which creates conflict, but then go create the rules of engagement. Lay them down first. Say to your partner, your friend, your your child, okay, you're obviously angry. Now it's not hard to work out what anger is. It gets very expressive. And someone's energy gets heightened, they're going into anger. You can say, right, obviously you're really angry. I can see you're about to fly, and I'm going to hold space for you right now. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to witness. I'm going to be here, and you just go for it. Get it out. Whatever is on your chest, whatever is feeling difficult for you, whatever resistance you have, get it out. But here's the rules. You don't get to yell at me, be abusive to me, or horrible. You can share any frustrations that you may have where I might have caused a frustration, or you created a frustration in yourself because I wasn't acting how you wanted to. You can share that, but you are not to be abusive to me. Go for it. That's what anger wants to hear. It wants to be given that space. It wants to be given that container. It wants to be seen, held, and witnessed so it can be released from its own self-imposed chains. Anger is not an emotion for us to run from or judge people by. I know what it's like to be told, I can't handle your anger. And I've turned to my partners. I've actually turned to them and said, can you not hold space for me while I get this out? And it's so interesting when a partner or a friend or someone says, you're blaming me, but you haven't actually come out and said, this is your fault. That there will drive anger into top gear when people, um, in a very unconscious way, say, you're blaming me. That it's not good to project onto another person and say what it is that they're doing, or say to them, you're just angry because of this. Don't go telling anyone their story. A space holder shuts their mouth, holds space, and emanates unconditional love. In fact, to be able to hold that space that does have clear boundaries is an expression of unconditional love, because the person that's holding space can feel very nervous. They know they are taking a risk by being there. But of course, what is risk? Risk is trust. And the greatest risk that we can take is love. And what is love? Love is presence. And so being a presence in which anger can be expressed then allows a conscious interaction to take place. If we were to allow each other and ourselves to be able to express anger consciously, now it happens consciously by laying down those boundaries, but unconditional love is there. If we can do that, there would be no need for wars. Wars are simply Wars happen because people close their hearts and close their ears. They don't want to hear it. Everyone has a reason why they act the way that they act. Everyone has a reason why they feel the sadness that they feel. But unless it's heard, the person that's feeling the sadness or the anger does not feel validated. They don't feel valid. And this is where self-worth and self-value can end up going out the door for people, because what's happening is they're living in a state of anger that is suppressed because the sadness, the sense of loss that they've had in their life has not been witnessed, held, and released. I remember a moment one time, I posted a quote on Facebook, and maybe I do, maybe my ego does try to put things out there as if I'm someone that knows something. The only thing I know is this. The only thing that's important that I know is this moment right now. My knowledge, is just knowledge. It's, it means nothing really. The only thing that's really important is this now moment. And so I'd put a meme up on Facebook, and this woman that I don't even know, she like slandered me in the comments, where she really, really got into it. She said, "Who do you think you are? Do you think you're some kind of guru? I know who you are. You're just a plasterer, and that's all you're good at." You know, no one knows that you left your wife and, all you did was ride her coattails. I'm trying to remember all the slanderous terms that were coming across. And she said, it was all written out in the comments of this post. And she said, she was an amazing nurse and counselor, and all you wanted to do was ride her coattails and be a counselor like her, but you're nothing but a plasterer. Won't you go back to what you're good at? You think you're all amazing and high and mighty and all of that sort of thing. She gave it a good dig, and of course my ego first of all wanted to react and go, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" So there was anger rising up within me, but I stopped to be conscious and watch what was happening. I wanted to react, but then I realized that a person that says that must be feeling quite angry. And underneath that, I know is always sadness. And so I gathered myself and I private messaged this person and said, "Hey, look, let me just line a few things up. What you've said in the comments in my post, there's some things that are not correct. First of all, my ex-wife was not a nurse. She was a social worker. Second of all, she was not she was I I never wanted to be a counselor or anything like that. Um, you know, I'm a coach. I was trained as a coach, and I just corrected a few things that she said in there that were not true. They were very, very practical things. But what does that say by I didn't say you're being angry, you're wrong. I didn't tell her she was wrong either. I just shared back to her some of the things that she said that were evidently not true. I never wanted to be a counselor. And my ex-partner was not a nurse, she was a social worker. They were just very, very basic, straightforward things. And so I then just put, what else may you not have correct in what you're saying about me? And then I got a message from her that said, I'm so sorry. Can you please take the post down? And I said, certainly. So I went on and I deleted the comment that she had put there. Now, what I learned from that is she was angry. And then, after that, I said, I hope everything's okay. This was during COVID as well. I said, I hope everything's okay with you. This is a really tumultuous time and emotions are high. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Now, what did I do? I just really, she was being angry and abusive towards me, but I continued to hold a safe container, and then she was able to self-reflect. And that's what the point of the container and the space holder, space holding for anyone that's angry allows them to reflect upon themselves, what is going on. And she came back, in such a nice manner after that. She said, I'm so sorry for what I said. I don't know what came over me. I don't know why I said that. And really, what it would be is obviously there was something within my post that triggered her. She was already, anger was waiting at the door and it leapt out. But my not going into resistance, I didn't resist her. I didn't judge her. I allowed her to have her voice. And by her hearing her own voice and me being that witness to allow that to happen through being a safe holder of that container, that safe space holder, she was able to self-realize in herself that that's not what she wanted to do. But imagine what would have happened if I had gone into resistance or defense. It would have created war. She would have just come back at me. I would have just fed the fire with fuel of resistance. Like I said before, anger is already resistance embodied. And so when anger meets more resistance, it's just fuel for the fire. When it comes to children, I talk often about being a space holder. And often parents will fly off the handle at their children. Why? Because they can be feeling so frustrated, and there will be some sadness underneath at times. Because as a parent, you can really feel like, yeah, I don't have to do this. I don't have to look after you 24/7. It gets to that point of overwhelm, and there will be that sense of loss within. This happens to parents where there's that sense of loss because you are, as a parent, you are sacrificing so much in order to help this child grow into a responsible adult, if that's your intention, and it should be your intention, really. Well, I don't like saying the word should, so I take that back. Being a presence for children is a real presence, an aware presence, an allowing presence. And what I mean by that is an allowing of expressions of emotions. When it comes to children getting angry and frustrated, for instance, my stepson, his go-to, because he learnt this from his sisters, who learnt it from their father, is to completely fly off the handle and begin to go into violence, aggression, very masculine anger. And it took a lot for me, for someone like myself. The evidence is there that I've done a lot of healing around this because I lived in a house where there was violence and anger, and it was very triggering for me to have that violence and anger there. My two paternal children, I did not, they went through some of the anger expression in the first marriage where they would hear us fighting and but then I was always coming back to them and apologizing that I didn't have the strength, I didn't have the maturity to be able to hold myself in the anger, but I was being met with a lot of resistance, and so was my partner. None of us were right or wrong here. It was an immaturity that was going on. Neither of us could deal with each other's anger or frustration, and so that was the demise that took place. Not being able to hold space for each other is that demise of the relationship. But when my two children, I helped to really build resilience around the emotion of anger, around the how adults that are unconscious express themselves at times, and but coming into this environment where my beloved, I'm there for her to help. Obviously, her children come with her. That's the first thing we've got to understand when you go into a relationship and there's children involved. The children come with the partner. And I really had to find my depth of calm and groundedness for these children because I'd never actually been in a situation where the the violent behavior was so permitted. And it was only permitted by a mother that was in absolute fight or flight, in survival mode. And that's where I had to step in. And all I did to help these children begin to mature through their anger was give them that space to express themselves, holding that container so they could express their anger. And what happens is it gets exhausted. And I saw it time and time again where I'd be holding one of the kids back. I literally had to at times where they were in such a violent rage, they're trying to abuse their mother physically or ruin the house. And I'd actually have to hold them back from destroying things. And they would get so angry. But the anger, it was good. I just had to hold space and continue to keep them safe. And the anger would go and go and go, and then boom, it was released, and then the sobbing would come through. The sadness would rise to the top, and they'd let go of trying to destroy and inflict and impose and resist, and the sadness just came out like a floodgate. And of course, that's all emotions need is expression, at least acknowledgement in um at, at the least sense. These emotions need acknowledgement. And that's why in QFT, quantum freedom therapy, which I put together, it's basically EFT tapping as its foundation. But then I brought in conversational hypnosis and some NLP and kind of mixed it up a little bit more to be able to take things a little bit deeper and also to help reprogram. So we're doing the undoing of the emotion, the charge behind the story. In QFT, I don't really let people go too much into the story. I get them to feel the raw emotion in their body. And then we go through a process of helping them release that out of the body. And then afterwards, through a light induction and what we call the boat, by releasing actually a ceremony, a inner ceremony takes place of letting those emotions go and then bringing in light frequency to heal the system. So these are releasing, these are letting go, these are healing, and then there's that re-acknowledgement and looking at the story and discovering that the story it is not the emotion. The emotion was not the story. And by releasing that, they can look back at the story, at what happened, and there's no charge there. There's no trigger for them. And the beautiful thing about QFT is it's so easy to learn. If any of you out there would like to learn it, go to our website or private message me. I can send you a link and you can get access to the course there. It's not hard to learn. It's really quite simple. I have put everything into script so you can just follow it. It's great for parents to help their children move through their emotions. It's great for the person that's practicing it as well because you learn more about the importance of being a space holder for emotions and helping people move through them. and removing them. Great for partners, great for anyone that wants to be able to help their family. And really what we all need in our relationships and our families are the tools to be able to help each other heal. So we don't always have to keep going to the professional, to the counselor or the healer to move through these things. So it's the reason I teach QFT in the foundations training. Many people can just do the foundations training, learn it in a weekend, learn it in one evening if they want to. But then they have a tool for life to be able to build their own emotional intelligence. So there we go. That's the podcast for today. Not many people, not sure how many came on to Facebook Live. No interaction as of yet. I'll keep doing that until sometimes people want to come on. I'm going to do some nighttime transmissions, which gives more people the opportunity to come on and have a chat, talk about healing. The conversation gets so much more interesting when it's not just me rambling on, but when there's a dialogue, we can really begin to open things up and go into new dimensions of healing, understanding what healing is, and playing our role and part in that. We all have a role to play in our collective healing, in our personal healing, in our relationships, all of that. We all have a role to play. And so anyone that does watch this podcast and has reached to the end, you obviously have a heart for healing, a heart to understand this neglected emotion called anger. Let us not judge each other. Let us refrain from running each other down or seeing that these are simply ego deficiencies. Avoid the healers that want to avoid what's presenting in the moment. Or as if someone, I can think of a moment where someone I was helping with cancer, she was told by her oncologist that this is going to take you out. And that moment there was really upsetting to her. And I could see that that seed that the oncologist had planted needed to be removed. I didn't go for the root cause of why the cancer was there. I said to her, how do you feel about what she said? She said, I'm so angry. And then I held that space for her to be angry. And then I was able to help her release and let go of that emotion. You've got to deal with what's immediately presenting first before you go back too far to locate the core and remove the wound. Healing is an undoing process and then a rebirthing of the soul, where you give birth to your own soul without the conditioning and programming, but from a place of freedom and peace that is within you. Healing is a journey, and it takes your whole lifetime. And look, for some people, I have gone into looking into the Akashic records or past life regression, but I avoid that as well, really, a lot more now. I don't go too much into that because that becomes another whole fractal of avoidance. You know, what makes you think that you're going to, if you go into trying to heal the past, when you can't even heal what's here first? Deal with what's in front of you. Deal with what is being presented to you and prove yourself, not that you prove, and share with yourself, understand in yourself that you can then begin to journey back and undo the processes. You can see how you, and it brings more understanding as to why you were doing what you're doing. As you go through the undoing process, it brings a deeper acknowledgement and self-realization as to why you were so unconscious. And then that helps you to no longer drop into those unconscious states. And then when you finally arrive back at the root of the problem, you'll approach it with compassion, understanding, love, and a genuine acknowledgement of every piece that took place and what got you to where you were. And what will generally happen is you'll be able to appreciate it and accept it fully, why it happened. And you'll also be able to see the gifts, not just the infliction, but the gifts that that wound brought into your life. May you find the present moment in every day. May you take the journey of healing, the journey back home, sending you all my love. Let there be light.